Well, we just got off the episode with Jen Kleiner and mental health. Holy cow. I mean,
Wow.
we learned a lot about parts, right? We got a lot
We
of parts in
did.
us.
And there's so much to think about and so much to unpack. Like, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode again because there are so many things that I had never put words to before that Jen perfectly described.
Like, what was your favorite part of, what we were learning today?
I love the idea of the different parts of ourselves and just using kind of like an internal dialogue to be able to communicate with one part versus another. Just you step back for a second. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Let's just set that anxiety to the side and figure out where the overwhelm is coming from. It sounds a little bit like multiple voices inside my head, but that's how I feel. And I just have never put it in those words before, but I felt that before. Like, I'll have a more intellectual part of myself that's trying to talk down the emotional part of myself that's super freaking out.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
It's interesting because that they call that like multiple personality disorder, right? Which is a disorder. I thought, well, I guess in some ways we're all walking around with that. And then on top of it, when I was trying to find the stinger, there were some clips about that Elaine DeBotton mentioned about being your 20-year-old self, your 30-year-old self, your 80-year-old self, and how actually within you do have parts of you at different ages that don't relate. Actually, your 80-year-old self cannot relate to your 30-year-old self. Like, mentally, just is not possible. You do have distinct people inside you. So we all are walking around with multiple personality disorder. Yay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's clinical, probably, maybe.
As long as it's not dangerous.
Like, my 43-year-old self does not understand some of the decisions of my 20-year-old self. Like, there's such a vast gulf, except I still have both of those people inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah. My 20-year-old self inside of me sometimes looks at my 41-year-old self and is like, you're doing great, but have you figured out how to have more fun, maybe?
Yeah.
Or
like, how come you don't laugh anymore?
Why don't you go dancing anymore? Like, what happened to that guy? What I really enjoyed is that her definition of self, like the whole therapy is about getting in touch with yourself, and self being, we have like the little s, the self, which is separate, and the big S, which is the self that is source, right? And I love that kind of came into play today. And of course, faith, Beth, I mean, we talk so much about faith on this show.
It was a beautiful description of how we experience source, within ourselves as just as a muscle. Like, we have to just keep using that muscle so that we can become more comfortable with being within ourselves and being able to express what is within ourselves. I think I shouldn't say most of us, many of us in our society today, we're so distracted. We're just distracted all the time by 100 different things. So we don't even take the time, and we might feel things like anxiety or depression. And we just, until it gets really, but until it gets really bad, it's like, shove it down. I'm not going to take the time.
Up as like, an ulcer or, a broken foot or something. Yeah. You can't go anywhere now. You have to deal with it. Or COVID until it's like super, like a pandemic, global pandemic or something.
Eventually something. And I mean, I know in general, none of us like COVID, right? It's not been a good thing, but it does feel in some ways, and maybe even to an extent that we didn't take advantage of, like a reset.
I would say it was a good catalyst. It was a good catalyst, like I think, to reset our minds on what is the most important, which is health. Health is the only thing we have. And if you don't have it, you don't have anything. And man, Jen is so accredited. I mean, she's done IFS therapy, voice dialogue, imago therapy, traumatic and neuroscience, character mapping, the Sedona method, feminine power, landmark education. I mean, she was the perfect person to unpack this idea of mental health and what is it? How do we get into it? What were some of your tools that you thought that she gave us that you felt really interested in?
I personally experienced that grounding yourself outdoors is like it's a powerful way to get the energy out. Whatever energy it is, if it's overwhelming or negative, it can move out of me.
You go for a walk. I mean,
I go for a walk. All right. Sometimes I play the piano. I guess that's not outside, but creative music might be the thing, right? That would work for some people, or maybe they, like, I think she mentioned knitting or needlepoint or something. It could be anything, but it moves the energy from yourself where it's going to get stuck and turn into
Yeah, she mentioned there was
pathological.
an internal and external ways of addressing, right? The first thing was to
Hmm.
kind of move the energy, of course, and then, of course, then to address what's going on inside, which
Hmm.
is the stories and narratives and voices, if you will, that are informing your choices and behaviors. So it's interesting. Mental health is crazy. It drives everything that we do. It's, it's how we make choices during the day,
Hmm.
whether we choose drugs or whether we choose exercise or whether we choose to say something loving to our partner or yell at them incessantly about what they're not doing. I mean, it's just, and or how we treat ourselves. If you look in the
Right.
mirror and say, like, I hate you, I love
Hmm.
you, you're doing a great job, I can't stand you,
And so much of it is so unconscious. It's so in our subconscious that we're not aware of it until, and this has been one really powerful thing in therapy for me, until you have someone else bring it out to you and say, okay, let's exercise some compassion on this 6-year-old self who's really the one making the decisions because she's still dealing with that thing that happened. Um, I
and
also
you
loved when
are
Jen,
you are
we
dealing with
are,
that thing that
I am
happened
totally
still.
still dealing with it. Yep.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
using the same old pattern to deal with it as I did when I was 6. So
yeah, yeah. But
speaking of the
you're
different,
getting in touch with the 6 year old and you're letting her
mm,
know, like, hey, we have some upgrades here. You
yeah,
missed out. You're still hiding in that little shadow over there. Like, hey, you forgot. Like,
yeah,
I've got tools now.
you're okay. And I'm going to protect you, but I'm going to use the tools of my grown up self to, get out of this situation. Or the other thing that I really like that Jen brought up is, and I don't think she phrased it exactly this way, but the imbalance between the, I guess, intellectual, maybe the more patriarchal, masculine is really the word I'm going for. The masculine side versus the feminine side. And because of that great imbalance, I think that was her answer to why we are where we are with mental health. It's
Yeah,
because
that's
there's a
right.
great imbalance between, we put so much effort into like expanding our intellectualism and building things and making
Mars. She
stuff.
gave us the Mars
Let's
thing.
go to
Like,
Mars.
yeah, like
But then, yeah, but we can't even have a healthy relationship with our partner, or everybody in the country is full of anxiety and taking medication because they can't,
I,
which I'm
I
not
like to.
denigrating. I take anti-anxiety medication. So
Ain't
like
nothing wrong with meds or
totally,
self-medicating or even
totally.
coping, because we learned about that
Right.
as a part of you that needs to cope. I love that she called it emotional technology.
Yeah, that was a great phrase.
That was really
Wow.
cool. It was like Caroline's Engineering a Miracle. That was one of my favorites. Let's engineer a miracle. It's like, this is such a hard topic to really get into, because how do you talk about, we don't have very many words for our feelings. Brene Brown's been talking about this in her new episodes on HBO about how do we, what are, there's like 64, 80 words they've come up with that I was totally unaware of. Sad is
Yeah.
not just sad. There's different levels of sad. There's a whole emotional spectrum. I mean, just being able to talk about it's weird, but not being able to see this stuff inside of me is
Yeah.
weird.
Or to have like my therapist had to bring out what my negative beliefs were about myself. Like she had a chart of sample beliefs that I could choose from every
Lovely.
negative because
That's
I couldn't
lovely.
I couldn't put a word to it. And she said, "Listen, most people can't. Most
Yeah.
people can't identify that their thing is, I don't feel like I'm enough or whatever. I don't feel like I'm protected because it's so deep within us."
It's
So,
weird that the only way that we actually get to that is when our relationships fall apart, if we
mhm,
aren't having healthy behaviors. It comes out in our behavioral everyday choices, right? So you're like,
right.
oh yeah, I beat up on myself a lot, or I yell at people all the time, or I
Hmm.
don't know how to be empathetic because I'm insensitive, or
Hmm.
it is really one of the things that I'll leave with, I think, is that you shall know them by their fruits.
That's a great place to
If
end.
the fruit is sweet and nutritional, then you're probably doing the right thing, and not
You're
fake
in the right
sweet
path.
and
No,
nutritional.
not like fake banana
We're not talking
extract or
about
something.
greenwashing. We're talking about,
No, genuine.
a genuine, really good. Yeah. I mean, you really know when you're doing mental and emotional work because you're able to give to others. You're able
Hmm.
to, you see people who are expressing health, right?
Yeah,
Everywhere they walk, people amplify, they grow, they heal. Every part of the planet they go to, they regenerate.
yeah.
Healthy people just have a way of really, yeah, getting
I will
in
say
there.
I have to throw this in for the chronically ill. So people might be chronically ill. They might be doing a lot of internal work, but their body's not, the way that they want it, but they still can put out that positive, loving energy that I think you're talking about. So even if you have a disability or you have a, whatever, that doesn't need to affect your ability to bring light into the world and to bring emotional health into the world,
And we
which is,
found that from Jen.
yeah, absolutely.
I
I
mean, she
mean, she
struggled with
struggled
chronic
with,
illness, right? Yeah, like her
yeah,
whole life.
forever.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't even need people to be healthy. Actually, it's just awesome to sit across the table from somebody who's like, I am seeing it there. I want to figure out how to get my life right. And
yeah,
right is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, something that expresses what you want or what makes you feel good
yeah,
within yourself.
yeah,
And so like Jen, I mean, she's has healed a lot of her chronic illness, but I think it's a testament to her own personal mental health and her mental health education that she pays attention to her body.
yeah.
So, when it's expressing some kind of illness, then she takes care of it. She doesn't just try to shove it down. Or maybe sometimes she does shove it down because we're human beings. And
It's
sometimes we just want to numb it, you
coping,
know?
and don't
Oh,
shame
yep.
yourself for coping because if you got
No.
to cope, you got to cope, and that's going to get you to the next day. So at least you're still
Yep.
around. And I think if you miss all the mental cues and emotional cues, and it ends up in your body, and so like they're all three connected. Obviously, the head, the
Mm-hmm.
heart, and the body all reflect the health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's good to just look into that. And what a great episode, Beth. I mean,
It
it
was
was really such a
fantastic.
joy to see Jen Kleiner here today on the show and discuss mental health and healing ourselves, each other, and the planet. Be sure to catch this episode with Jen Kleiner and with mental health because it was really a good episode to help you understand how to become more healthy or to reach towards health or just to understand what in the heck a therapist is and why we need therapy and how we got in this place. Right, Beth?
Absolutely.